You're listening to Mischief Media.
All right, welcome back to PotterCast talks about The Last of Us. We have decided to just start talking about other things that we're into because if you're still here on PotterCast, there is a chance that you just like listening to us talk. Yes?
We love you for it. Hello,
Yeah,
hello.
And
we like sharing things. We like to talk with each other or about each other, as Frankie said last week.
Oh yeah.
About each other?
Yeah, you were like, we like to talk about each other. And the one, oh, no, that's not what I meant. It was
Another
very
podcast.
cute.
Tune into my secret podcast where I talk about John and Melissa.
Last week, we intended to do episodes 1 and 2. We only got through episode 1. And I know, Frankie, you feel like episode 2 is going to be fast, but a lot happens in episode 2. Episode 2 opens in Jakarta, actually, with the scene of the woman eating in the restaurant and the Jakartan police come to get
Yep.
her. So they come and pick this woman up from restaurant where she's eating salad, nothing bread on her plate. And they come and get her. Just these police just pull her out of lunch. And she thinks she's committed a crime. And they take her actually for her expertise in mycology, which is the study of mushrooms and fungi. And they have, you remember this scene now, Frankie, where she goes and she studies.
The response was like,
where she says, no, this can't possibly be in
bomb
humans.
the city.
Yeah.
Boom.
Like it had me thinking, like if somebody picked you up off the street like that, like looking like FBI or whatever, and they're like, it's a national security emergency, like what do you think they would need you for?
Something like that where it's like a military situation. I would wonder what she did, which is, did I commit a crime?
Right. Yeah. I think that would be my first thought too.
No one would need me in the apocalypse. No one
It'd be like, we have a dramatic Harry Potter emergency.
Yeah, we have a
that
dramatic
we need
fan
to
convention
remember.
emergency.
Yeah.
Yeah, draw you a picture.
Someone needs to storyboard this for the government.
And planner logistics.
Yeah.
In the apocalypse might actually, now that I think about it, what am I talking about? I may not be the logistics guy at my company, but I could do it, have done it. What about you, John?
Yeah, like a lot of my skill sets without electricity would be really hard up for being able to do anything. I don't know, but
they have electricity. It's just not widespread. They have generators. But John, I think that you could probably take a non-connected computer and program lots of little things that would be indispensable.
Oh, probably.
And highly specialized knowledge. And then they'll start making local networks, not internet, but they'll start making local networks around towns and stuff. And you might be in heavy demand.
Oh, shoot.
Yeah. Like Nick Offerman did with his gate and stuff.
Yeah. He had a hell of a setup. I'm excited to talk about
I can't wait to
setup.
talk about that. All right. I know we really want to talk about episode 3.
But let's creep our way through.
I was just using it as an example.
Yeah.
John's skills.
Yeah. She called it a specific cordyceps. It's called Ophiocordyceps. And I don't know if it's the only cordyceps, but it is the one that's in that planet Earth. That's a specific genus of cordyceps. Cordyceps. That's in, we all know the planet Earth video of the stuff coming out of the ant's head.
Poor ants.
Poor ant. When this woman was picked up, when do you think she knew that we were done? The second she saw the slide? The second she saw the body? Or in that moment where he says that other people are missing?
In my head, it's probably when she realized the fungus can grow in the body. Like this is impossible. Because that seems to be like from the first episode, that the fact that there was a mutation that let them grow in higher temperatures.
Yeah.
But I just find that fact interesting, so maybe I fixate on that.
I think that if you had to point it, probably panicking when she realized that it could use a human as a host, and probably had a little bit of hope. She thought that maybe they had it somehow contained, but when they realized that there were people that they lost track of, I'm sure that was ball game for sure. But one of my questions that I still have about this whole thing that I don't know if we have any kind of answer for is like any mutation, like something had to have put it over the edge. If, say, just temperature is the X factor that they had to wait for. If not this location, if not this substrate, like the understanding would be that it could have just occurred.
I think it probably was occurring someplace else also, but it spread because so it's called the Bogasari flour mills. They are in Jakarta. It's the largest flour mill in the world. So it probably, my guess is if it's mutating, it's sprouting to other places as well. This was the flashpoint, the moment that you can't put the pin back in the grenade.
Yeah.
Let me ask the question. I guess I just assumed that the outbreak was happened around the world. It wasn't just happening in one spot.
It's because of the flour products.
Because of that flour mill.
You hear in the first episode, you hear on the radio problems in Jakarta. Like it doesn't happen all around the world on one day. It's as that substance gets around the world before they could realize, right? I have so many questions. What happened to the president? What's going on in DC?
I would love to see what happened in DC. Like,
Right?
even if they lost control for a little while, like they were able to like make these quarantine zones. Are you telling me that like nowhere in DC is there a quarantine zone?
But you got to think that would be where the most heavily locked down military zone.
Yeah, and like anybody left, wouldn't they want to like come back and see like all of the supplies, all of that would be there?
From a purely voyeuristic gamer standpoint, I so badly want them to make New York and DC.
Yeah.
What's going on? The Disney parks.
Oh my God. Yeah. Oh, how fun.
Ooh, that'd be interesting.
Oh, wow.
Right? Roller coasters.
Yeah.
What's going on at the Alamo? There are so many places in America that I want them.
Thinking like Antarctica, like assuming
nice
that
place to
they didn't get a shipment of grain, like how quickly did they realize it was the grain? Maybe they avoided it for a while and they see what's happening on the news. They're still like, oh man, what a crazy situation. I'm hungry. I'm gonna get a sandwich. And then, sorry, there it is.
Game over.
Yeah.
I think if it was something like COVID, where there's a 10-day incubation period, or that it takes a little longer to spread, I think they'd be in a better place. But because by the time you tell people not to eat it, it is already out in the world. Plus, one person can infect so many people. Plus, it lasts so long. Like, there's so many factors that there's just no shot to stop that once you.
And it if I had it and I coughed on your face, like you would get it and then die, or would only become a zombie if you died, type of thing.
In the show, it's biting or liquid transfer, blood or fluid transfer. In the game, if you cough, no. But if you give off spores, so the infected person will either continue growing and become a clicker, become a bloater, get bigger and bigger, or lay down and die. And one of the things the fungus does is instruct its host to lay down and die in a place where it can multiply the most. So that's why you see these like big collections of fungus, because they'll just settle down and become piles of mold, and that's where all the spores come from in the game. But they've changed the spores to like these under. Yeah.
I think at the end of episode 2, not to get ahead of ourselves, was that like a spore thing in that one's mouth?
They've changed.
Yeah.
That is actual. If you look up the cordyceps, that's what it looks like. That slimy, wormy. That's what.
Yeah.
And they've made it like.
But that was not in the game.
Yeah, not in the game. But it's also.
It was very visceral.
Yeah.
And it feels like it's growing out of the existent wet tissue in your body, right? It feels like that's what would happen.
Yeah. Pooty.
Soup's gross. Great acting in that opening scene by both of them, but the older woman especially. She's apparently some very famous person in, I think, Asian film. Yeah. I should have looked her up.
I thought you were going to say like she's actually like a specialist in like funguses and everything else that they've just.
Do you know? There's a lot of fungus stuff in pop culture these days. The Star Trek Discovery, Anthony's playing, or will be playing for one more season, a mushroom specialist, a fungus specialist as well.
Oh, here you are.
Mycology. Who knew?
Not your ecology.
That was maybe the worst joke you've ever made.
No, there's a long list.
So she tells them to bomb the city.
Which is not like thing that you would expect her or anyone to say. lightly. We see how polite she is and how considerate she is and everything else, like earlier on in her scenes. So for her to come at them with that, it's like, oh man, this is serious.
It's also the first word that's recognizable in English. It's an interesting choice. There's this long pause, is all this chatter, and then she just goes, boom. And it's just, it hits so strongly. And then she says she wants to go home. She wants to go home and be with her family.
Fair.
I don't know what I would do in that situation. I don't want to have to live through that.
I would try and leave, right? Wouldn't you try to? Like, it sounds like she's going home to wait to be blown up.
Well, I feel like she just imagines that there's not a good likelihood to
get out,
escape the situation. Yeah, it's very depressing. She will not be one of the last of them.
No. Oh, wow. That's so rude. That's super rude. What's going on with the Eiffel Tower? What's going on? There's a note in the second game, a minor note, that when you go by Las Vegas, you can still hear them screaming inside all the hotels.
Oh, God.
That it's just, you don't go near Vegas.
Oh, God.
What do you mean scream? Why would they scream?
The clickers and the bloaters and whoever is in, because it's so badly infected, because it's just such a glut of people.
Yeah. Oh, man.
Oh, so like they again, so like they actually scream? I haven't experienced much of these clickers yet.
Sure.
It's just new to me. And so there's something really creepy about them being so stoic and not like they're aggressive physically, but they don't like. I guess they do yell.
Yeah, like that kind of a screeching.
Is that like they do have like evolution where they start out as like they can run and they can click and then they can bloat or whatever it is, and like it's been 20 years when we pick up with Joel again. Like, only people that should be still running and clicking are the ones that were more recently did. But like, after a while, you would have to run out of people, right? Except for the ones that survived up till that point. But there's only so many people that survived up till that point.
Joel says in this, they answer this a little bit in this episode. Ellie asks how long infected last. And he says some of them a few months and some of them have been moving for 20 years. And that is what I want the creators to address the logic.
Yeah,
right?
I love it. I'm sure they have it.
What do they eat? If they're all trapped in the Las Vegas hotel and there's no humans to feed, do they eat each other? What happens?
Ooh, they have to eat each other, right? Because like they eat mushrooms.
Ooh.
Maybe they eat the mushrooms that grow out of them, and then it feeds it.
Gross.
Yeah, I don't like it.
I have a really gross theory on what would happen. Will and I talked about this. What would happen if a pregnant person was infected?
Ooh, tell us.
That if the baby is sufficiently along and has developed into a human, that it would see that child as food.
Oh, no.
Sorry, I should really trigger warning. I should really have trigger warned that. Gross.
Like the baby's going to eat the body?
No, that the host.
They eat the baby.
Oh. So it would depend on like where it is in like the pregnancy. I thought you were going to say that somehow like the host be like instructing the fetus via whatever sort of stem cell like instruction to be like, okay, so there's some cordyceps out here now and y'all need to like adjust your programming to like counteract like if you ever encounter these cordyceps, here's how to defeat them.
So honestly, I think that may be how Ellie became immune. I think her mother got bit right before she gave birth.
Oh shit! Like right before?
Right before. And she gave birth in enough time for it to be present in the child, but the child to create antibodies. Because we know that the COVID vaccine is passed down.
Okay.
Wait, the COVID vaccine is passed down?
Yeah, if the mom gets vaccinated, the child is vaccinated.
That's wild.
That's
while
wild.
Pregnant? If a woman gets pregnant after the...
I don't know. I'm sure if while she's pregnant, but I'm not sure if you get pregnant after. Yeah.
And I was hearing like breast milk could somehow also transfer the vaccine.
Oh, interesting.
But I don't know if that was for real or not.
Yeah, breast milk's magic.
It's so strange to be in this time of like somewhat unknown science on like an important thing. We haven't collected
one day we'll
data,
know it all.
But eventually we'll know and we'll look back and be like, damn, like they were wasting all that time like wiping down their boxes of cereal.
Joel. Anyway, to get back to the episode, I loved and I laughed when, first of all, I love the shot of Ellie curled up in the grass sleeping. It's like innocent in nature, and it's so bright, and she's like all alone, and she's curled up like she's in a womb. She turns around and Tess and Joel have their gun.
Yeah, like, because that's the moment she's going to wake up and have been turned, right?
They're just waiting. They're just waiting for it to happen.
No, they've never seen it not happen to any. They're very skeptical. I would be skeptical too. Shit.
And then do we know how long she was in there with them?
She says that her arm is 3 weeks. She says that her arm is 3 weeks old, the bite.
Do you know she was immune until that point, or that was a discovery for her as well?
Oh, that's a discovery for her as well. This is a discovery for her as well. You'll learn more about that later.
Yeah. How far have you watched so far, Frankie?
Honestly, only the first 3. I will watch more. I'm excited to watch and discuss about it, but this is an effort for me.
Yeah.
Spooky.
Oh, I'm so sorry, Frankie.
Was
it gets
3
so much
spooky for you?
It was different because that was a different type of like tenseness and anxiety.
Yeah.
I was going to handle it. So it was different. Like it wasn't. I didn't get to have to worry about as many zombies, which is nice. But there's the whole ugly part of humanity that comes with zombie stories that it gets taxing.
Yeah.
Oh my God, this past week, Frankie. Oh my God.
Oh, yeah. Episode 8 is going to be real hard for you, Frankie.
Yeah. Brie and I were watching that thinking like, oh, Frankie.
I wonder if we do a joint watch with you for that.
Well, I'll see. I will definitely know more once I'll start watching episode 4 this week now that we're talking about 3. And so
do 4 and 5.
I'll know more about my appetite once I get deeper into it.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think Tess knows about Sarah? Do you think Tess knows Joel's histories?
I expect her to know about Sarah. Honestly.
Sarah's his daughter, right?
They got close. Joel's meant to be in a relationship with Tess. Not that Joel's like a super adjusted. I'm sure like hasn't had any therapy since the whole Sarah situation. Like
there's no therapy.
Yeah, maybe he's had some heart-to-hearts with Tess.
There's definitely not a lot of therapy
Tess
going around those parts.
Tess had her own heartache, her own situation with her own child at one point that Joel was around to be there. So I would think it would have come up.
Is that from the game? I don't remember this.
Let me try to remember this. So Tess had a child that at one point became infected, and she didn't have it in her to put the child down. And so they ended up locking the child in a basement, essentially.
That's right. Where do we find that out?
Oh, wow.
I don't remember, honestly. And half of me now wonders if this is not the person that Ellie encounters when they went to that. Joel was like, I stashed some guns here or whatever, and then Ellie finds that would actually make sense. Like, why would they put him there? But that'd be wild.
They wrote it for the show, but they never shot it. It was a backstory for Tess. Craig Mazin revealed this. Tess had a kid, she had a husband, she had a son, and they were infected. She had to kill them. She killed her husband, but could not kill her son. She locked him in the basement, where theoretically he's still a clicker. So there is a basement someplace where Tess's son is still clicking around.
Like, what would you do in that situation? It's like you have a child. The child has no hope of recovering. Do you really if you don't kill this child, you know the existence it's going to have. I don't understand the choice to just not want to. Even if by the time it ever gets killed by somebody, if ever, it has to go through the long, arduous, painful, losing your mind to the cordyceps stage. Like that has to be a nightmare. Yeah. Like, how do you not want them to avoid that?
Yeah, I think I would. To me, it seems like a mercy to do some sort of situation where you talk to them and tell them what's going on, and then
just have Joel do it.
I need to remember the title of it because Jay read it, but it's this world where people's organs fail, and like if kids get it, like they die, and so they have like these Disneyland parks to euthanize children.
Oh
so
my
they
God,
know
what?
Die, they know they can't live. I know
this is real.
He said it was a real. No, it's a book.
Okay. Oh my God. I'm gonna say
so
what?
It's like a Disney. It's like that's the norm of the world.
Make a
like
wish.
Only the rich.
Make a wish,
but only the rich can afford. Because there's the main character is a kid who is like 9 because his family's rich and can change his organs every couple months. But other kids who can't afford that, they just go to this like Disneyland park and the kids know, and it's like this whole culture. And so it's this. But at the same time, the stigmatism is gone because that's their reality. Like Jem read it, and he said that it's a very gentle and charming read. The concept
Ask Jem
really
the name.
freaks me out.
Yeah.
I will.
It
But like
sounds
of that situation.
It's spooky.
First of all, you think that people would just stop reproducing because if you know that you think like humanity would end.
Right?
But what we're really talking about where this is concerned is terminal chronic illness, right? We're talking about cancer. We're talking about ALS. We're talking about terminal MS. Not MS is not terminal, but like when things have developed that you can't really move. We're talking this. It's really an allegory for chronic illness.
I mean,
and
a
what
lot
you
of
do
chronic illness
in
is
those
so
situations.
long thing, though.
Dementia, really dementia is
I
the
feel
big
like
one for this, right?
what makes all those things as awful as they are relative to just getting hit by a car is how long drawn out that illness is. And like
But we're
the
talking about
infection
months.
stage to the transformed stage is hours.
Right, but we're talking about they're still in there,
Yeah.
but they can't be themselves until they become, we suspect, until
Yeah.
it's like clicker stage, right?
Yeah.
So how is that different? I'm not saying it is or isn't, but is that different from somebody being trapped in dementia? Is they also become a killing machine, so that's a whole other layer.
Yeah.
I wonder if we're ever going to get any kind of story or canon in some form that talks about the scientists that survived, how they were able to get to the point where they had this device that they can scan somebody and tell if they're infected. Like all of this shit would have had to have come after. And like I've seen people in the Last of Us subreddit talk like and say, "Oh, I'm actually in this field. Like, this is how this would had to have worked or whatever."
Interesting.
You don't just stumble upon this technology. At some point, they had to have been doing the experiments on people, like maybe even experiments on like humans that they intentionally to see how long things take and wait to see what markers show up in the blood and everything else, and like. Maybe that's what happened in DC. Who knows?
You'd have to think there is a plan in place, someplace, at least in America and other first world countries, that has a list of people, much like who you would collect after a nuclear fallout, but for a terminal pandemic like this, where there are certain scientists, there are certain engineers, there are certain people.
You would think
we
had seen that all by now after COVID.
You would think, but like
came out of the woodwork.
But COVID didn't turn people into killing machines, and it wasn't tearing down cities as horrific as it was. So like you wonder if there is a kind of emergency plan where you gather these specific people and get them into a bunker, isolate them, quarantine them, make sure they're not infected, and then they get to work on fixing whatever it is, and it has generators. There was an interview recently where Neil Druckmann said that he thinks there's more story to tell in The Last of Us.
Good.
Frankie, I won't spoil because part 2 is part 2, but I personally think they're working on 3 now, and I hope it goes into some of that.
Yeah, I would love to. I'd love it if it would. It's hard to talk about this without talking more about what happens and where they lead things into. But I agree that like I was able to imagine in my head canon what happens next, and I feel like there's plenty there to draw on, and also plenty of big gaps to fill in the satisfying ways. I hope that they do more. The most recent episode 8, they just said is like the most viewers that they've had so far, 75% higher than the premiere. Like that's
all of you people are insane. I am forced to watch this show. You guys are wanting more. I'm sitting here cringing and getting nervous, and I realize, how do you guys like? I don't know what is driving you guys to watch this.
Masochism.
I'm doing it because I want to talk to you guys. What?
Masochism. It's like story masochism.
Like
I want a story to destroy me.
There is some media that I can watch that makes me feel uncomfortable, but when I watch this, aside from like the human on human violence, like I don't squirm at this. Like I'm curious about this. It feels like a mystery.
I joke a lot about masochism. I joke that it's like and part of that is, yes, I want a story to wreck me, but the humanity in this story and the story that is ultimately told with it is one of the best stories. I play the first game. Yeah. I play the first game repeatedly not because I love fighting zombies, but because I love the emotions, the arcs. I've only played the second game like 2 or 3 times because it is not, the first story is about love and the second story is about revenge. So it's not as good a place to sit in, and it's not as enjoyable on purpose. That is the point of that game, which is really another topic for another time. But
can you have revenge without love?
Yeah. Revenge.
Yes.
Revenge just needs a strong emotion and like and a sense for justice. I think there's a lot of places that can come from.
Well, like, what are you getting revenge for, if not something that you loved being?
Petty revenge.
Yeah. I
You
don't
mean
know.
real, like,
Yeah, 'cause
vengeance?
part of me, like, I honestly, there's a part of me that's like, that's not fair. You got away with it, so fuck you. That's like, I'm gonna tell, and I want you to get in trouble. And it's like, but I don't know if that's a love.
Is that
or
this
like
kind of
justice,
revenge
or
that
if that's me being mad at somebody for getting away with something that I don't agree with.
I'm saying, like,
There's
the
an arrogance to it.
kind of revenge that you wake up with morning after
Vengeance.
morning. Yeah, having something that needs to be
Bloodthirst.
satisfied. Like, that
I think
is
that requires love.
that is something that, yeah, I
Yeah,
think
it has to
is
be
born from that.
Yeah, I think the
Born from
offense
love.
has to have been rooted in love. I think that's astute.
Because I don't like. Okay, look at. I'm going to use a very trite, or I don't know, a very binary example. Like when it comes to certain Republican leadership, there's like a revenge energy that I want, like vindication for the travesties that I think that they inflict.
Sure.
I'm lacking to see the love there, other than it's me reacting to the lack of love.
Well, it's
from
not the
them.
love that you
It's
have
like,
for
is that
them. It's
exactly?
it's
This
the
is so
that
where would the love be in that situation?
the love is the love and the mourning that you feel for your world, your country, your fellow citizens, that they have in the presence of these sorts of people getting into
Okay.
positions
Yeah.
of power. Like,
To me, that's
Valid.
more the negative space of love, but it's still the same word, I guess, in concept.
Same
'Cause
root.
It's the absence thereof.
well, something was
But I
taken
guess
from
it's
you. Something important to you was taken from you.
There's a lot of working through on that.
Yeah.
Deep thoughts with PotterCast.
I think
Deep
that's another
thoughts.
thing when it comes to TV watching. I think so much of my internal life growing up was really uncomfortable that every media I watch is just escape. I don't like
Mhm.
watching things that make me sad or make me think about things I don't want to think about. And so if there's no escapism to it or beauty to it, it's
No, I
harder
feel
for me
that.
to watch. But I think everyone has that to a certain extent, so I don't want to like, ooh.
Yeah,
Anyway,
I feel
I
that,
was
and
thinking
I've
about
not.
that last week.
I think
Yeah.
that, like, certain people will feel certain things like more, and again, not to get way ahead of ourselves, but there's some things that happened in the episode just yesterday that highly triggering in ways that every episode previously hasn't been yet.
They really outdo themselves
Yeah.
every week.
Truly.
And there's this hilarious meme that's going around of Bernie Sanders goes, and below is, once again, I am sobbing at that zombie TV show. It's like,
Yeah.
it's a zombie adventure that somehow manages to be freaking devastating every week.
Right. Yeah.
He said
So
that?
good. No, you know that Bernie Sanders gif? It says, I am once again, and then they like
And once again
change
asking.
it's like, I'm once again sobbing
Oh,
at that zombie television show. Funny.
yeah.
Okay.
I have
On to the
such
episode.
the visceral loves that I think I've mentioned this before that I have in the game is exploring post-apocalyptic worlds. There is such, it's so attractive to walk in ruined, not like I would want to do it in my life, but there is some that voyeuristic look at lives that got paused,
Yeah.
walking into like old buildings and old spaces that people used to be in. There's something cool about that.
Yeah.
So when they
Yeah.
walk out into Boston and like the buildings are leaning on each other and they go into a
Mhm.
place that used to be a state house, it used to be a place of government, and now it's just an old ruin. There's something, it feels mythical.
There's got to be something to that,
Yeah.
because this is happening in lots of media, and or at least lots of similar. My sister Anna is in love with this game Fallout,
Oh, I play Fallout.
and yeah, very popular game.
You
Fallout
can play Fallout
Fallout
forever.
4
You
is the one that she's
never
been
stop.
playing. Yeah, she's constantly. I'm like, I don't understand, because I haven't really played it through yet, but just existing in that world is so interesting to her.
Yeah.
And
It's post-apocalyptic Skyrim.
yeah,
That's what it is. It's the same game studio too.
there you go. They make
Yeah.
good games.
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like if I had to try to put my finger on it, it's almost like you have the ability to see like what happens after like your own life is over. And if you things that humans get preoccupied with, like their mortality, I'm sure is high on the list. And So to have a chance to peek your timeline and see what was left behind.
What happens when all this ends? When we shuffle off everything.
Right.
It's such a cool. Yeah.
I guess it goes to the more of the zombie narrative. Could give me like an abandoned theme park that's overgrown? Oh my god, yes, that's really cool. But then I can't divorce the fact that like all these people left their things behind because zombies ate them. And so
but just forget about that.
Yeah.
But just
right.
For a minute. That's what I hope. Like DC is completely abandoned and we get to walk around in it. I want a video game. I don't know if one does this. I want a video game to make a faithful replication of the White House. I want to walk around in it.
Oh, what a national security hazard that would be.
That's valid. No, like
I remember
pictures, there's pictures of the blue, like there's pictures of it all online. Like, you know what I'm saying.
There are video games.
Blueprint.
I feel like it might have been a Grand Theft Auto, or it was something that was like making like a block for block, mile for mile recreation of Manhattan. And it was the first.
You did that in Grand Theft Auto?
Well, what I'm saying is that like they got put off from that early on because of like these, like it wasn't too far long after 9/11. So like the idea is it's like you're creating things that could help terrorists train on how to orchestrate.
What I'm talking about would be about as useful as watching The West Wing or making a 3D model on your computer. Like, they're not going to talk about where the entrances and exits are and how to get past security. It's going to be like the stuff that's online, but your video game character can walk through it.
Yeah, no, totally. Yeah.
But because it's fun, it's that voyeuristic, let me touch it. Do you know that there's a replica of the Oval Office at the New York Archives? There's a 3/4 replica.
Oh, that's
and you
cool.
can just walk into it. It was very cool.
3/4?
Yeah, it's pretty.
So it's like you feel big in there.
It feels big, but it actually feels very small. So if it's 3/4.
Well, I meant like you would feel big in it.
Yeah, yes, you do feel big in there.
I'm a monster.
But it makes you think that the Oval Office isn't actually that big.
Yeah. I've been in the Reagan Oval Office. Like they have a recreation of it at the Reagan Museum. I think it's the same size.
And X-Men 2, they made a recreation of the office for
I've not been in that one.
The president.
The president. What else?
We're way off topic. We're not even at episode 3 yet, but that's okay.
You want to know something funny though, you guys?
What?
Like you're talking about walking around recreations of things like accurately. That's a reason a lot of people are playing that Hogwarts video game. They made that castle.
100%.
They made that castle. Every room, every closet, everything that you could design. They did
Cool.
textured. Oh, that's where I've seen a lot of it. Like it's all over YouTube. And
the complications of that game,
right?
I swear.
I know.
It's such a clusterfuck.
It's crazy.
I still use your example of J.K. Rowling pooping in the pool. I think it's such a great way to explain it.
Yeah.
Like, the pool's still there. It's still Harry Potter. It's just they're
right.
shitting it now.
But I like that's cool and wonderful and everything, but it's still fictional. I like recreations of real shit.
Yeah.
It's really
fun. I mean, I ain't gonna pretend that we didn't.
I don't
like
dislike.
Traipse around Scotland trying to find some like imaginary version of it, and then pretend like we're not gonna get excited when they actually make it in the damn computer.
We are trying not to.
I understand.
Pissy about this thing.
I get you.
Don't complicate things.
Hey,
okay.
YouTube is a thing.
Complicated thing for a lot of people. So
YouTube is a thing.
Back to the show.
Mm-hmm.
The hotel scene is actually from Pittsburgh in the game when they go to Pittsburgh, but they moved it to Boston. I thought it was really sweet, so we can have that moment of them kind of again being in a hotel, being in a ruined old remnant of the world.
Yeah, that was cool.
The hotel is where what's her face like pulls her. That's at the end of the episode, right?
Yeah, that's the end. That's the State House.
Okay, thank you. One thing I didn't get is why did she take forever to light that stupid lighter when there were grenades around her?
There were almost 40 clicks. There were I counted 39 clicks, and usually there's like a trope of 3. Now in 2 different episodes, LES if something bad's in a back room, and he goes only you. So I'm like waiting for the third one. I think it's probably going to be in the last episode, but this was 39. She tries, and I think it was just tension.
Yeah.
Wonderful tension. It's wonderful tension.
It was hard.
But it's just one of those things that like I really wish, I guess you want the grenades there for effect or something, but it just seems it would have been wise just to take those out just because like my attention fixated on it.
Yeah.
Like,
No, I
if you
loved
guys
it.
ever did you see Way of Water?
No,
Avatar: The Way of Water?
No.
no, we got to
It's
see
not
it. So
great.
don't really. Okay, so maybe we
I
didn't
thought
watch
you were
it.
telling us
Seriously.
to go see it. No, you were saying to go
Because
see
I
something
needed
else.
to talk about how it's the Emperor's New Clothing. Everyone loves it.
Oh.
And I'm like, this is bad, right? Like, there's a MacGuffin in there like no other.
It seems to have disappeared from the discourse really quickly, Frankie.
Just like last time.
I hope so.
It's a conspiracy.
People love that. Love it.
It's a conspiracy, says John.
No one's actually going to see it. It's just James Cameron running out and buying the tickets.
Seriously,
something
he
else?
probably would.
Yeah.
He's like a secret billionaire or something.
If you were Elon Musk and you had that many billions, you can just buy $1 billion worth of tickets, and then it's done $1 billion at the box office.
You could.
Hey guys, let's all distribute our wealth. Let's do that. Let's tell the billionaires to give us some money. It makes me so sad when I think about billionaires.
Yeah. Many of them have become very disappointing. Anyway.
And so then,
do you, Ellie,
There's
besides
probably no
when she got
billionaires with
infected,
zombies.
do you think the time when Ellie got infected was the first time she saw an infected?
like running around and
Like,
being close
for
to
real?
it. I don't know. Actually, I don't
Think
know
about it,
how
like-
sheltered existence was in the
She's
school.
never seen anything. She's never seen a.
She's never been on the
in a
outside
car.
of the QZ, and if there's not
Yeah,
been
that was
infected
cute.
in the QZ, then maybe she hadn't seen one.
Yeah, I wonder.
What's the QZ?
The quarantine zone.
The quarantine zone where in Boston?
Yeah. There's in major cities have quarantine zones where they shuffled people in if they had enough room, and if they didn't have room for you, they took you out of your home and then shot you.
Yep, which is super cool.
As we learned in the beginning of the third episode.
3.
One thing I enjoyed about, like, Tess made a comment earlier in that episode talking about how the zombies or the mushrooms are more connected than you realize, type of thing.
Yeah.
And then that's when they were looking down and they were all like wiggling in the sun, like,
Right.
And then later in the episode, when she was trying to light that stupid lighter for 39 times, like one of them like just stopped and just came over and like did that creepy kiss with her. It makes me like, that's interesting that in the books, in the video game, can they like telepathically talk to each other, for lack of a better word?
Well, they echolocate with each other, but there's no indication that they can they do know when a non-infected is around because they attack.
It's
But
really
I-
interesting.
When someone's infected, though, they can like smell it on them.
I would imagine, right? You can feel it, and that is true
like,
of
in the-
mold. Like that connectivity is.
Mhm.
I don't know if it's sentient like they're talking about, but there is a connectivity aspect to mold. I'm talking out of my butt about this, but I believe that is true.
In the games, do the zombies attack each other?
No.
What did you all make of the kiss? What did you think that was behind that?
I at first was like, this is absolutely ridiculous. What in the hell are they doing here? And then
God, it was so creepy though.
it was creepy as hell.
I loved it.
It was a really interesting visual, but not seeing anything like that ever happen in the game, my first reaction was like, what in the hell? And then I digested a little bit more. I listened to the podcast like a good fan that I am. And they talk about the fact that in every other instance that we've seen the humans interacting with these things, like they have been resisting, most often with violence. The infected and the whole life form, if you want to think of it as like a collective, it can appreciate and recognize threats and will respond to the threats accordingly, and usually like with violence. But when it encounters Tess and it recognizes that, yeah, there are like grenades around here, but she's not attacking any of us, they don't feel like they have to engage with her like that. Like, alternatively, part B to this thought is that they recognize she already is infected, but she's just so early on that they recognize maybe they can accelerate it a little bit by getting in and giving her a face full, whatever it is they've got in their mouths. I don't know.
Whatever it is they've got in their mouths. Will and I thought it. Oh, go ahead.
So, John, you said that the podcast said that it was because she wasn't attacking them?
They did make a point to say that she wasn't resisting. And if you're not resisting them, they're not going to come at you with violence.
But it's not just that she wasn't resisting, it's that she's one of them and she wasn't resisting.
Yeah, that could be it too.
There's lots of other humans that don't resist and still get attacked.
I think ultimately they would still walk up to you and bite you, but they might not knock you down first. They might like try to just shove it through your ears or your eyes.
But I would, biting is also attacking in this instance, I would say.
Yeah.
Yeah, to pull out my storyteller tool, like I would like the fact that they had her have that scene with Ellie talk about like they're connected, blah blah blah, and then at the end of them having that such a poetic scene that was so creepy and tragic. And part of the reason I like part of me the reason I want the grenades to be out of that situation is just because like the mushrooms telling her not to light it. And so was that her struggling, and her fight was like, no, I'm gonna do this. I thought there was a take of it that the mushrooms, like because they're so symbiotic and they're already taking on, like she's infected, it was going like, no, we're not gonna let you do this. We know what you're doing. You're not gonna blow us up. And then she did it anyway.
I perceived it
That's
as
what I wanted.
Yeah. I perceived it as welcoming her in.
Yeah.
And like the cordyceps in her connect, because it was at the neck, right? So the cordyceps in her connecting to the cordyceps in him, she is now part of the network.
Yeah, totally. I
so
feel
it
like
was
that
just
makes
like
sense.
you're not connected, you're not online yet. I'm going to come connect you.
I do feel like
You know?
all of this, though, is like working backwards from the fact that ultimately they decided they wanted to see infected essentially kiss somebody who is still at that point mostly human and have the kiss be the vehicle for the infection in that way. And when you think about how thematically this whole season is meant to be love,
Types of love.
and the ways that you can express love in this world and how that can be of a reason to continue going on when it's gone, like we see in episode 3, like that's the hopeless feeling that makes you think I don't want to live anymore, not the fact that they're in the post-apocalyptic like insane situation, having the love and then losing it.
I like that analysis of it. I think there's a lot to that. There's an argument that the cordyceps is alive and trying to protect itself as well, and is just evolving.
Yeah.
I liked it. It seemed just too like in a world building way, devoid of the nuance of like character. Like I liked the notion that the fungus is connected. It recognizes that is a very healthy host, and so if they give her another like boom, like that's a very abled body, and so that is just gonna like that's her final dose. Now she's full zombie, and look how healthy she is. Like this one wasn't decaying. This one got a little bite. Like that in my head was part of it too, but that is more exact. That's just more world building, but in my head I can
like
see
that.
it working that way too.
No, totally. It can be
Whoops,
all of it.
what a mistake. Boom.
Yeah, it's like, oh, she betrayed us. Right.
Tess is such a badass. In the game, Frankie, Tess Fedra shows up in the game. They are chasing these people who left the QZ, and Tess takes down a bunch of them to slow it down, and then you enter a whole fight to get out of the building. Like everything in the game, all this story is interspersed with so much more fighting and so much many more impossible situations because it's a video
it's a
game.
game. There has to be. It would be lame if there wasn't fights constantly.
Yeah, and it would be very weird.
And
if
it would be boring if it was always just infected that you were fighting. But for the show, it totally makes sense to cut out that whole thing. Yeah, there are humans that were hunting them in the story. That's a distraction when we have 10 episodes and so much else to talk about.
Yeah, there's one more
who I knew not to get
Anna Torv.
attached to.
Oh, the character. Yeah. Anna Torv
Tess,
is the name of the actress. Yeah.
Oh, and so now, like after episode 3, now it's more. I don't know how much. I don't like now. I'm caught up with what I know about the universe because, like, I knew it was gonna have to be the two of them on the journey, and so I knew not to get too attached to her.
To anyone else, yeah. But there's one more piece of that episode that I want to mention, which is Joel and Ellie's sort of first moment of connection, which is where he reaches out to her for the first time and walks up to her and says, "Is it everything you hoped for?" when she's looking at the view. And she says, "Jury's still out, but man, you can't beat that view." That's direct from the game. The scene is shot for shot from the game. And it is a very special fan moment. It's just one of those. And I think this might be why, because Joel has been resistant to her in every moment. It's the first time he initiates a conversation. It's the first time he asks her opinion. It's the first time they have a moment, and it's wonderful. Yeah. And they did it.
I think Tess is a big reason for that, though, right?
Yeah, because Tess's motivations have changed.
Yeah,
Tess is a believer, has hope, and sees at the end of what she knows is the end of her life, sees a chance to finally do good at the end of it.
Her line to Joel there was intense. You know, I'm like, I'm about to die. Like, I will accelerate that to save you. Like, if I ever mattered at all, if any of this relationship and whatever you didn't want to label us, like, if any of that mattered, take my one last important thing with you and make it important to you too. I think that'll reach you. I don't know who you are. If that doesn't reach you, man.
And it makes the kiss even more tragic because the thing that she couldn't get from Joel, the thing that she wanted, the connection that she wanted that she never... I mean, she climbed into the bed and he's facing the other way. He never touches her like that. She gets that from the infected in the last moment of her death.
Yeah.
Before her death.
Oh, man. Yeah.
So I have a proposition for y'all.
Yeah.
We'll record again this week and do episode 3 alone because we keep trying to do 2 episodes at once and it's just not working.
Listen, there's only 10 episodes in this season. I don't know when they're gonna 9. Yeah, I don't know when they're gonna do another one. There's no sense in rushing it.
Right.
We're enjoying. We have enough to talk about. It's a good observation.
Cool. Do you want to do some drums?
Okay.
I have an update about that podcast we talked about last week.
Oh my god.
What I found out the next morning, the J.K. Rowling podcast. When I found out the next morning that these people came to LeakyCon and recorded interviews with people at LeakyCon under a false pretense. So it was a press pass that they applied for that went to some site that doesn't exist anymore that now forwards to the Barry Weiss conservative blah blah blah. And we have very clear guidelines that if you're going to interview anybody at our event, you have to tell them what it's for, you have to make them sign a waiver, all these things. And they took interviews with these people just talking about how much they love Harry Potter while ignoring that and all its attendees very much pushed against all of J.K. Rowling's rhetoric. They were technically, it's not like illegal, but man, does it feel slimy.
Yeah, I didn't really listen to it, so I don't really know what they were asking them. Like setting them up with quotes. Like gotcha kind of questions, or was it just like a fluff piece?
It's all just quotes about how much they love Harry Potter. It's a fluff. The whole thing's a fluff piece.
Yeah.
You can tell that they cut, like, there's one line.
There's no shortage of, like, Christ. Like, you could pull that from any year you wanted to.
Yeah. Right. You had to come to LeakyCon. Sorry, Frank, what were you saying?
There was one line that someone said, you could tell by the tone of the voice and just the language used, that it was past tense, that like we used to view her as a mother, as our mom, but then they like maternally, but then they talk about how people view her maternally, but it definitely was said in
was a caveat. Yeah. I didn't listen to it.
It was past tense. I did. My curiosity got the better of me, and
yeah.
Don't listen to it.
I'm not gonna. I tried because I tried. I did try to listen to it, and somebody was like, "Oh, LeakyCon people are in this." I was like, well, I gotta listen. So I just skipped around a little bit and listened to the LeakyCon interviews. What else you watching? What else you guys doing lately?
Steven Universe. I'm rewatching that
with
Jen.
I need to watch. I've heard it's so good.
So wonderful. It's honestly the opposite of The Last of Us, but with just as much love.
A good palate cleanser.
It's sherbet, but it gets complicated. Like there's some nice complicated flavors in it later. Like it really matures. It's a show that ages well, and going back and watching it from the beginning again, I forgot how fun it is to be in that universe. It makes me I want to be a crystal gem. What will my gem be? I want my and I draw my gem Sona.
Frankie, I'm waiting for you to just create your own one of these things one day.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, I know that you love the system of it all, and I feel like it's just a question of like patience between you and like having your own version of this thing that we're talking about. You could give them their binary.
There's definitely been a drive to want to tell a story, so I think eventually I want to, because I went through some complicated bullshit, and so I think there's some narrative in there that I can use to help people.
Yeah.
What else are you guys paying attention to these days?
I was trying to think if there's any other show that like we have been excited about and watching, and I'm struggling to think of anything.
I have been listening.
Recommendation.
Oh, tell us.
Let me get the title right. The House by the Cerulean Sea by T.K. Klune.
Mm-hmm.
That's how you pronounce it. I don't know. It's just this really quaint story about, in this world there are magical people, and so he's a caseworker that works with magical youth, and he goes and inspects orphanages that house magical youth and make sure that things are up to par. he goes to this one special island. The special people, like management, takes him out of his role, and he goes there. He meets this guy. There's love. You meet all the kids. There's one of the kids is the Antichrist, and that's what he gets to check up on him because he's really powerful and dangerous. It's just a really lovely allegory. I got a lot out of it from like being queer. It's like, oh, it's like any kind of other, like the magical people, just kind of like It's kind of like X-Men meets, I don't know, Mrs. Peregrine's children. You know what I mean? But there's no fighting. It's just all. It's really quaint. There's a fairy, a gnome.
Oh, fighting.
I don't know what it is. There is, but it's not. It's wonderful. It was really lovely.
Okay.
I have been listening to Worlds Beyond Number, the new D&D podcast by Brennan Lee Mulligan, Bria Iyengar, Eric Ishii, and Lou Wilson. Oh, it's so good. I'm a patron so I can get the early content and like all the lots of content. It's like take the best people in the game and just, it's called Worlds Beyond Number. It is absurd. They're like playing with the genre. It's delicious. It's very, very good. Can't recommend it enough.
I just went to it. Boom. Download
yeah,
it.
you will love it.
Yeah, I love those guys.
So yeah. Anyway, y'all, I miss you.
Miss you too. We're gonna see you both pretty soon.
Yeah, it's nice getting to hang out and
to
come together.
Even though it's a
Absolutely.
scary zombie show.
I know.
Frankie, you can pick the next thing. We're done with this. You pick the next thing. We can do Steven Universe or something. It'd be great.
I will say this, as still listening. There's the reason that we picked this show wasn't just like this random thing. I know we're twisting Frankie's arm here, but like at least on my part, like nothing else has came around that has like scratched the itch quite as well since Harry Potter, even like in all the time in between. That probably says more about me and my awareness of fiction in general, but I just happened on this one, and maybe it was the combination of the game and the show. Just
totally.
But we didn't just like have the topic handed to us here. It was interesting enough to actually want to pick it apart, like we picked apart Harry Potter, because that's the fun part.
Agree.
There's a lot of meat on the bone.
Even in my discomfort, I'm still enjoying this.
Yeah.
So, like,
good.
Just being
good, Frankie.
Like, ooh, gross. Ooh. So this is fun, and I probably wouldn't watch it if we weren't doing this. So in a way, I'm grateful.
They are.
Amazing. It's good. Grateful and scared. Excited and scared. Cool. Well, twiddle dials and stuff. See you next time.
Take care, y'all. Bye-bye.
Bye, y'all.
Don't kiss a mushroom.
Nope.